Blessings, good evening. Tuesday night, so that means we have a few questions that have come in that we'll try to answer. Luang Por, what is the best meditation object to begin with? Well, the texts have 40 main meditation objects, but there's actually probably more than that. Ajahn Chah used to encourage people to practice mindfulness of breathing. That's a good starting point, because we all have the breath, we all breathe. It's there, available for us to practice paying attention to, becoming mindful of, and clearly comprehending. These two qualities, sati or mindfulness, sampajanya, clear comprehension, are the central qualities you're developing in any meditation technique or method. Usually we talk about meditation, two aspects of meditation. There's the aspect of calm, which is often referred to as samatha or serenity meditation. And then the development of insight, clear vision of the way things are, and particularly directing the mind to know and observe the three characteristics, three universal characteristics of existence. That is anicca, impermanence, dukkha, suffering or the unsatisfactory nature of phenomena, and anatta, not self, or the lack of self in phenomena. So anicca, dukkha, anatta, contemplating or observing these three characteristics also requires mindfulness and clear comprehension. In samatha, we are just putting attention on one object, such as the breath. And that's like training the mind to be mindful of one thing. And most of the time we need to practice that because our mindfulness is not very consistent or continuous. It's patchy. It's there sometimes, sometimes not. So we need a method to help us become more mindful so we can pay attention to ourselves or know ourselves better. Know the mind, know the physical form, know feelings, know the thought formations and mental states arising in the mind. And also to understand cause and effect. You need to be mindful and aware to see cause and result, cause and effect at work in your own experience. So Ajahn Chah encouraged people to improve their mindfulness, perhaps using the breath meditation as a starting point. And he'd say something like, just close your eyes, sit in a comfortable, firm posture where you've got energy, your body is stable. Close your eyes and bring attention to the feeling of the breath going in and the breath going out. And he encouraged people to pick it up at the tip of the nostrils or the space between the top of the lip and the nostril. But then to begin with, to follow it down and observe at the chest. It's another point of contact, as your lungs swell with the in-breath. And then the third point, the abdomen, as that swells or rises up with the in-breath. To be aware of that. So 3 points, tip of the nostrils, chest, abdomen. And then abdomen deflates, so notice that. Chest shrinks back, the lungs shrink, deflate, and then the air comes out at the tip of the nostrils. So in 3 points, out 3 points. To begin the meditation begin like that. And this gives your mind something to work with, to pay attention to, these 3 points. And as your mind loses awareness, loses mindfulness, well, we start to think about other things and we become distracted. So we've lost our mindfulness at those 3 points. And sooner or later you'll realize you've lost your mindfulness. It could be after just a few seconds, or it might be after many minutes of thinking and letting your mind wander all over the place. Suddenly you realize, I'm supposed to be mindful of the breath, not thinking about what I'm going to do tomorrow and all these other things. And that's showing you what the extent of the work you have to do. You know, if you can be unmindful of the breath and thinking for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, letting your mind wander all over the place, that's showing you how weak your mindfulness is and how much you have to practice. Because your aim is to be mindful of each in-breath, each out-breath. What you find is if you put effort into this, of course it's frustrating, the mind wanders around, but as you do it more often, more regularly, you get better at it. Better at keeping attention on the breath. And you'll find that moving between these 3 points, tip of the nostrils, chest, abdomen, starts to become even a form of distraction in itself, that movement of your attention from one point to the next, to the next, to the next, starts to become a little bit tiring because your mental energy is gathering at one point as you're practicing mindfulness, and you'll find that it's more comfortable and more natural just to keep your mind in one point, on one point. So it could be the tip of the nostrils. It's where Ajahn Chah encouraged to practice, but it's not wrong if you find the chest area is more comfortable or the abdomen. You experiment and then you let your mind just stay in one place. So for example, tip of the nostrils, and all your mental energy is gathering there at that one place. And of course, if the mind strays away, wanders into thinking, you have to bring it back. Ajahn Chah used to say, it hasn't gone anywhere, it's just you've changed the object. Because mindfulness is not strong, a thought arises and you take that up as the object of mind rather than the breath. So it seems like your mind is lost in thinking about the future or the past, reacting to something with pleasure, with displeasure. Very common one is pain in the body starts to impinge on us, and that takes up our attention and so on, or we hear a sound. So your work is to try and maintain mindfulness and clear comprehension on the breath. And clear comprehension is also, you are aware whether the breath is going in, whether the breath is going out, and you're looking to train your mind. There's a purpose to this. You're training the mind to maintain mindfulness with the breath. So you're giving yourself the right encouragement, the right words of instruction as you do it, to keep bringing your mind's attention to the breath until it stays there. And the monkey mind quietens down and you're staying with the breath more than you're losing your attention by getting distracted or falling asleep. So that comes through practice. So meditation needs regular practice, and you gain this quality of calm, or we say samatha, where you have the ability to place your mind on one object and keep it there. And from that you get this sense of inner calm, physical calm, mental calm. The normal activity and agitation of the mind is calming down. So it's pleasant. So you may also get what we call rapture, piti, rapture, sukha, contentment or happiness. A deep happiness starts to pervade your body and mind because you're keeping your mind in one place. And the mind becomes brighter, happier within itself, not distracted, and gradually all the mental energy starts to stay in one place, say at the tip of your nostrils, for example. So this practice of samatha or calm is a very pleasant practice to develop over time. At first it's frustrating, difficult, but over time it becomes more enjoyable and self-sustaining. It's easier to stay with the breath, it's more enjoyable, you're more energized, brighter, happier, and so you may extend the length of time that you're practicing as you do it more often. And of course you're letting go of all the distractions, and that's also pleasant. Your mind is no longer being pulled around by different thoughts and worries and feelings. It's becoming more content to be with the breath and getting to know the breath better, investigating it, getting to know the qualities, how the breath is, the length of it, the speed of it, the rhythm of it, and so on. This is the best foundation for developing the second kind or second part of meditation, which is insight. Because to develop insight into the impermanent, changing nature of phenomena, for example, you need to be able to have some mindfulness there. The mind needs to be still so it can see change as change without getting lost in it. So generally these two aspects of meditation support each other. We develop more calm and steadiness of mind through mindfulness on a single object, and then we're in a position where we can begin to contemplate. Contemplation is often just observing thoughts arising, passing away without getting lost in them. Feeling, we observe feeling, changing feeling, pleasure, pain, perceptions, memories as well. Observing the mental activity arising and passing away in a detached way. Because mindfulness is there, we can do it in a more detached way, and then you're learning from your experience. You're seeing the changing, impermanent nature of thoughts, the intention. You want to go and do something, but you're just watching that intention rather than following it. Because you're in the middle of meditation, you're just watching an intention to go and talk to somebody or have something to eat or even just to scratch your head or whatever it may be. You're noticing that, but you're not necessarily following it. You're just watching it, an intention to do something arise, pass away. A thought, a memory arises, passes away. As mindfulness improves, you can do this better, and you're learning to see and observe the impermanent, changing nature of phenomena, physical sensations, mental phenomena, thoughts and feelings. And then you're also seeing the process. One thing is leading to another, causing another, prompting another, and you're seeing the lack of self in this. So you may hear a sound, and it may be an unpleasant sound. You're aware of the unpleasantness feeling that arises based on that sound, but now you're just observing it as a sound, a feeling arising, passing away, and the sense of self, attachment or identification with the sound and the reaction to it is changing. You're just observing from this place of detached awareness rather than the sense of me hearing something, getting interested in it, liking it, disliking in it, making something out of it in the mind. The mind is more detached and seeing that there's an ear and there's sound. It's pleasant, it's unpleasant, it may have some meaning, say the words of somebody has meaning, but you're not identifying with it and creating a self out of that. So you're not creating a person, me, mine, myself, a person, a being. It's just sound, words, feeling, arising, passing away. And we're developing wisdom, understanding from that. Of course, there's plenty to investigate and observe from the development of this wisdom, what we call vipassana, but these are the two strands of meditation, calm and insight. And the more you practice, you'll notice sometimes you're just practicing insight without focusing much on mindfulness. You have mindfulness and you're just observing changing phenomena, and it helps to reduce the sense of suffering. If you have some mental state of frustration or anger or sadness or worry, but you're used to practicing mindfulness and then contemplating the impermanence of it, you can see it's just a mental state arises, passes away, and you don't get caught up in it. So you're freeing your mind from suffering more and more, which is the purpose of the practice, is to free the mind from the causes of suffering, our cravings and our attachments and our delusions. You're freeing the mind from that. Or maybe just begin with the breath meditation and learn to improve your level of mindfulness to start with. That's a good beginning. Another question. Why do people collect and worship relics of the Buddha and the Arahants? Well, simply speaking, it brings them happiness. If you already have some faith in the Buddha and his teachings, and then in the Sangha and the enlightened Sangha, then if you're fortunate enough to be able to pay respects, worship relics, see relics, receive relics sometimes as a gift or from somebody, a monk or somebody, they can be, for many people, a great source of inspiration. They're like a medium that connects you to the Buddha or to an Arahant. The relic is what's left after the cremation of the Buddha or the Arahant. So relics generally come from bones, but different body parts can produce relics. Sometimes they're crystallized body parts, sometimes they're not. They're just little pieces of bone, different shapes. And people have been collecting them since the time of the Buddha, preserving them. And the Buddha said, it's appropriate to take the ashes of a Buddha or an Arahant and make some kind of monument, so like a stupa, a chedi, pagoda, and enshrine the relics in a monument such as that, and it's an appropriate thing to do. And we can then go and pay respects, worship at the monument, meditate. So when Ajahn Chah, our teacher, passed away, we cremated him and then collected the ashes, the relics, and a certain amount of those relics or ashes were put into little sealed containers and given to all the branch monasteries around the world and Thailand. And then another part, some of the bigger pieces of bone, were placed in a see-through glass reliquary and put into the centre of the chedi at the monastery that was built. And you can go there today. Any day you can go and pay respects, you can meditate, you can chant, you can bow, whatever you feel appropriate. But I always find meditation is really good in Ajahn Chah's chedi, stupa. You can just, you glance at the relics, you can see the little pieces of bone sitting there in the glass reliquary, and then you bow and you sit down and you meditate. And many people find, because they're recollecting the teacher and his teachings, they get a good, strong faith arising, which boosts their effort in developing mindfulness. And so you might practice mindfulness of breathing in front of Ajahn Chah's relics at his chedi, and you might become more calm and concentrated than normal and let go of all kinds of mental states and distractions better than usual. And this is one of the advantages of relics. People go to stupas. In Thailand there are many, many stupas of Arahants or stupas with Buddha relics in. Same in Sri Lanka, Burma. So these places are often very good places for meditation. They say the Shui Dagong pagoda in Yangon, capital of Myanmar, has some of the best energy. It's full of relics of the Buddha, and you got people like to go and meditate there before they go to work in the morning. It'd be a great way to start your day. Go and meditate at such a wonderful pagoda. I've only seen it from the air flying over. It was so big, the golden light attracted my attention as I flew past in an aeroplane once coming from India to Thailand. So I saw it. I've never actually been there, but some of the monks I know who have say it's a very good place to meditate. So whether it's a stupa for an arahant, their relics, or the Buddha, the relics of the Buddha, can be a great place to go to meditate, worship, and tends to bring out faith in people. In the time of the Buddha, all the kings who had the faith in the Buddha himself, when he was cremated, they all wanted a piece of the relics, the leftover ashes and relics of the Buddha. They were ready to fight. They were so attached to them. So people do also sort of develop a strong attachment to relics, and sometimes too much attachment maybe. They forget to practice. If you're about to start a fight over relics, you're forgetting the very teachings the Buddha gave. So we do use relics as skillful means to arouse faith and recollect the qualities of the Buddha or the Arahants, but don't become so attached that you're going to steal them or fight over them or whatever. Some people go the other extreme and they neglect them. They're given relics or they have relics and they don't care much for them at all. So you hear stories how people have been given some Buddha relics maybe, and then they put them somewhere and they forget about them, and then one day they go and look and they've disappeared. Twice I've been to Buddhist centres where they've previously had relics and their relics have fled, disappeared, and nobody knows why, whether they were taken or sometimes they say the devas can take relics, by telekinesis, they manifest them away. And those Buddhist centres, they had been through some troubles with a lot of disharmony. So I suggested the people in those centres need to be more harmonious, kind to each other, and then the relics won't run away. So sometimes it seems to correspond. If people don't have faith, relics disappear. People have faith, sometimes relics appear. We've had the relics appear in this monastery before, and other monasteries I know relics appear all the time. Sometimes I tell people about the trip we made to Sri Lanka with Ajahn. We climbed Sri Pada, the sacred mountain with a Buddha's footprint on top, and while we were up there, dozens of Buddha relics manifested in his bag, Ajahn bag, and I can tell that nobody interfered with it because I carried it up the mountain from the start of the journey to the end. It was on my shoulder or with me. I was looking after it for him, so I know nobody interfered with it. And before we went down, he was looking in the bag and found it was full of relics, and they'd all manifested by themselves on top of the mountain. It's a difficult one for the scientists to explain. Maybe one day someone will have a good explanation. So if you do find them, they arouse faith, well, you use relics on your personal shrine or in a monastery like this. We have Buddha relics in the head of the statue, or in a stupa. You can use them to recollect the qualities of the Buddha, arouse faith, arouse energy, and it can be a very helpful boost to your practice. Another question. When we see or hear people's unskillful behavior, if we are unable to teach them the right way, is it better just to remain silent and try not to react or respond to their unwholesome actions? Well, I don't think there's one simple answer here, because every situation is different, isn't it? if it depends who the person is. So, say if you're a parent and your son or your daughter does something unskillful, it might be the correct thing is to say something, not to be silent. And most kids know this, so when you say something you shouldn't or do something you shouldn't, your parents quickly tell you to change, to stop doing that. You know, don't swear, don't be lazy, make sure you get up in the morning. And sometimes parents may go too far and they're pulling their kids up on behaviour that's not unwholesome or unskillful. Maybe it's just an opinion thing, but if they're doing something unskillful, usually a parent will correct their child. And that may be in the case also, say, a teacher in school or a teacher in a monastery or a meditation centre. They may have to remind someone of what the correct behaviour or conduct is. Then in other situations, maybe it is best to be silent, isn't it? You know, if it's a work colleague and you're not directly supervising them, well, you may make more trouble for yourself than not by criticizing them or correcting them. It depends how close they are to you. If you're friends with them, maybe you can politely and at the right time and choose the right words, say something about their behavior. If it's hurting themselves, hurting others, causing trouble, you know, there are some people you can talk to. There's other people you can't. And that's life, isn't it? And it depends on who we are, who they are, what the relationship is. Some people we do just have to tolerate. And if it's really unskillful, unwholesome behaviour, well, they may even be causing themselves suffering and there may not be much you can do about it. Another way sometimes is you just find a third party. You're not in a position to tell them or correct that person, but maybe there's a third party who can, and you can inform them and maybe they can help. What of course often happens is we see people's unwholesome behaviour. Maybe they're a bully or aggressive, or they're lazy or uncooperative, or they're stealing, or they're doing something, and we get angry. Is a very common reaction, isn't it? It triggers anger in us. So then if we go and speak to them when we're angry, we often get a bad outcome because they just see us as angry, and we may be speaking the truth, but our anger is what they hear and pick up on. They may even come back at us and criticize us or cause trouble for us, saying we're angry and we're the bully. This has happened many times, isn't it? You know, the bully has turned around and said, "You're bullying me." Because somebody who feels an injustice is being performed is angry, and the bully uses that against them. So we have to watch that when looking at other people's behaviour and deciding it's wrong and wanting to say something. You know, if you speak or act in anger, it can come back on you. So always try to calm your mind first. Let go of your anger before you consider whether to speak or teach someone or respond to someone. So we have to watch the quick reaction in situations where we're not very mindful and someone's done something, we just speak before we think or before we establish our composure, our mindfulness. We have to watch out for that. So there's a whole training here, isn't there, of time, place, who it is, what the situation is, how serious the unwholesome behaviour is. It could be something very little that maybe you can just let go. Don't need to think too much about it, don't need to say anything. Other times it may be something very serious that we need to address. So, but first of all, try to let go of your anger so that you're not triggering their anger or making the situation worse than it needs to be. So, you're living with teachers, good teachers in monasteries. You notice sometimes they are just totally silent even when something really bad happens. Other times they will say something, and you can't always predict this. I like the story, Somdet Buddha Janto, so this monk, I don't know if you can see, when we zoom out, you'll see there's a monk sitting next to me with his two fists like this. That's Somdet Do, who lived a couple of 100 years ago and still is a very loved and respected teacher in Thailand. And he lived in many monasteries, had many students, and he was in one monastery called Wat Lakang in Bangkok in his older years. It was full of monks and novices, and some of the novices were still teenagers. They weren't very well behaved because they weren't well trained. They're just boys, really, put into a monastery. Perhaps their parents were fed up with them. They put them in the monastery to get rid of them. Anyway, these novices were supposed to be studying the Buddhist texts, but they were outside in the courtyard of the monastery playing the Gro, which is a game where you kick a little ball back and forth over a net. It's a bit like handball, but you use your feet. And obviously being unrestrained, making a noise, mucking around, not doing their studies. And Somdet Do came out of his kuti and he's just walking across the forecourt of the monastery. And the monks could see this and they all thought, now the novices are going to get it. They're playing, making a racket, misbehaving. Now they're going to get it from the teacher. And he just walked silently past without saying a word. And then the monks sort of were surprised. How come he didn't say anything? So then the monks went to the novice and said, "Did you see Somdet Do? He just walked past you." He was a very highly respected, highly renowned teacher. "Did you see he walked right past you while you're playing like that? Aren't you ashamed?" And they hadn't seen him, so then now they knew he had walked past, so then they got really ashamed and felt really guilty, and so later on that day they went and asked forgiveness from him. But the one monk noticing all this said, it's amazing teaching. He didn't have to say anything and he got them to come and ask forgiveness and apologize. Perhaps if he had said something, they'd have just got afraid and run away or hidden from him or got annoyed. But he actually said nothing and got a really good outcome. So sometimes it works as well. Doesn't always work though. The last question, how to stop creating more negative proliferations when the unpleasant feeling arises? Be mindful. If you're mindful and you've been reflecting on the Four Noble Truths, as we just chanted tonight, you'll know that negative proliferation is suffering and it's leading to more suffering. And if you can abandon the aversion, the mental agitation, the attachment that lies behind this negative proliferation, you're going to be happier. But to do that, you need to be mindful and recognize what's going on in your mind. You have to be aware to what's happening, which is why we practice mindfulness in all postures, and particularly in our sitting and walking meditation. We're improving the level of mindfulness so that we can catch this process where you have maybe a bit of painful feeling in your leg, your head, your neck, your back, or maybe you're just feeling really tired and it's kind of all over you. And then that stimulates some mental agitation, some form of aversion. If it's strong pain, say in a leg or a joint, there may be very clear ill will arising. I don't like this, I don't want this, and this is the feeling prompts the negative reaction, prompts the negative trains of thought and proliferation. But because you're improving your mindfulness through the practice, you become aware of this and you can start to interrupt the train of thoughts. Ideally, you're getting to the point where you just know feeling as a feeling. You're mindful enough to stick your mind on the feeling, observe it, but try to keep a detached awareness so you know it, but without creating this negative reaction and all the negative thoughts. And in the beginning it's difficult, but if you keep practicing, most people I've found, monks, nuns, laymen, laywomen, everyone can improve on this. And you can learn to be much more mindful of painful feelings in the body, and then mentally painful memories that are triggered, that just pop into your mind that may trigger more negative thinking or feelings of sadness, depression. Having enough mindfulness to catch the mental feeling. It's more subtle, it's harder, but you can do it as well. So as you become more mindful, continuously mindful, you see the process by which physical or mental feelings are triggering negative trains of thought, and you begin to cut it off. So if you get more and more mindful, you've got mindfulness immersed in your body, you may be as quick as, something happens, whether it's a memory or you're seeing something or it's a feeling around your body arising to do with a painful joint, say, and the aversion starts to come up, and usually starts here, doesn't it, in the chest. You start to have a movement out from your chest of tension, aversion, and then there's the negative thinking. You may be able to just subdue it there, not even go into thought at all. It's just this pain, and it's unpleasant, and you can't avoid that. But you're mindful and not letting your mind go into any kind of negative or unwholesome thinking. So you're keeping your mind wholesome even though you're experiencing a painful experience. That's your aim, to keep doing that. So even though you have pain, it doesn't give rise to ill will, aversion, hatred. Even though you have painful memories popping into your mind, you know them as just a memory. You're mindful and they're an unpleasant memory, but you're letting it drop. You're not letting it stimulate a bad mood and negative proliferation. Or unpleasant situations arise in your day. Somebody is rude to you or insults you. You would normally get angry, but you have enough mindfulness to see, you're aware of this feeling arising, the feeling of anger, and you just let it subside at that level rather than going into a lot of thinking or speaking or arguing. And you just keep practicing, improving this. Partly it's a speed thing, your mindfulness improves, you become quicker at cutting off negative trains of thought. And if you do it more often, you're seeing the benefits. It's nicer not to get angry. Even though something is happening that would normally trigger anger, and maybe it's something very unpleasant, pain in your body, or somebody doing something unwholesome right next to you, you would normally get angry, but anger is suffering and it's not helping you or them or the situation. So you prefer not to go to anger. Where people often get that insight is during sitting meditation where they're on their own, so there's nothing external prompting anger, and maybe they're not particularly having pain, but they have a painful memory. They can remember a time in the past where someone said or did something or some situation which normally triggers some ill will, but now they're meditating, they're more mindful, they see this. They say, no, I don't want to get angry anymore on this. They have that insight where they really don't want to proliferate in a negative way, think all the negative thoughts, so they stop. And usually if that's done with mindfulness, clarity, insight, then that particular memory or experience tends not to trigger anger anymore. It's finished, it's gone. That's the end of that particular karma. So the more we practice, the more the better we get at doing this. And it's for our own good. That's the purpose of it, is to free our mind from suffering. But we have to rely on mindfulness and then some investigation. Just keep practicing. So that's the end of the Q&A session today. We wish you all well and see you next time.